The thought of becoming a mom instantly floods us with feelings of fear and sometimes unrealistic expectations, not just of what our child will be like, but also of what we as moms are supposed to do and what the environment our children will grow up in will be like. We've been conditioned to think that if we don't raise them or provide for them a certain way, we're failing as a mom. But sometimes, life throws us curveballs that change our entire expectation of motherhood, and we find ways to cope the best way we can. My guest today is someone whose new life as a mom started off with hope and joy, but was quickly shifted due to an unexplained tragedy. Gabrielle Sullivan's motherhood journey is one filled with resilience and strength. It is one that taught her to put her daughter's needs first, even before her own grief. This is We Need to Talk Motherhood, Part 5. Gabrielle Sullivan, my dear sweet friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we're able to chat. Gab and I were pregnancy twins.
Oh my
She's also
goodness.
a pandemic mom and she has a pandemic baby. And our daughters were supposed to be born a day apart, but
Mhm.
somebody's daughter, mine, um, decided to stay inside for another week and just
Okay.
destroy my body.
My daughter was born on her due date. Like that doesn't happen.
That's
That's
is
not
very,
normal.
very, very rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm good. And I love that. Mine was like, nah, I'm gonna make you wait. I'm gonna make you wait. And no, I didn't have well, yeah, I kind of did have to get induced because they had to do like the Foley balloon for me.
Me too.
There's no I don't even want to that's like I
I
have
know.
PTSD from that. Let's not
Right?
even talk about actual birth because it
How do
wasn't
people
fun.
do it more than once?
More than one. That's the
Blows my
thing.
mind.
Oh my gosh. And obviously, and I don't know if this is where you and Jason are, but like I look at her playing by herself sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, you totally need a sibling. I feel terrible.
Yeah.
But then I think back and I'm like, I hated being pregnant.
Oh, I'm with
I
you.
hated the whole experience, but we'll see. We'll see
Yeah.
where we get. But when you and Jason did start to try to have a child, and where were you in your lives, in terms of your marriage, in terms of your careers, like when you thought, you know what, this is the right time for us to bring a tiny human into the world and just expand our family.
It's so funny because I do feel like we always had some kind of plan that eventually we were just like, nah, let's just do this now. Like, we were together 5 years before we got married and we kept
Hmm.
being like, well, we don't want to get married until we're like financially stable. And then it was like, we've been together for so long already. Let's get married. And were we financially stable when we got married? I don't think so. Right, and then it was, okay, we're married and we lived in California at the time, and we wanna move home before we have a baby, which we did do that, so good job. Um, and then it was we just reached a point, or maybe I just reached a point where I was like, "I can no longer live without a baby." Like,
Mm.
a few years ago, I reached a point where I said, "I can no longer live without a cat," and we got a cat. And then I had the same I said, "I can no longer live without a baby," and we had a baby.
I
Like,
love that.
I think that's just what it was, just a feeling more than a like, "Well, this is where we are in our lives."
Yeah, yeah.
I was just like, "You know what? It'll just work out. We will figure it out because we always have." And now we've been together 10 years, and we've always figured things out, and that's how we live.
And I think that that's more of a natural and normal way to go about things because when you try to have like this perfect plan of like, okay, I want to make sure we make this amount of money or we have this or we have
Right.
this, it's like you're literally going to be waiting forever. And the next thing you
Forever.
know, you're like 55 and you're like, oh my gosh, I wasted my life and
Yeah.
now I don't have a kid or I don't have this thing, but I did accomplish all these things, but I don't have that part of my life that's missing. So I'm glad that you guys just were like, let's just do it. Everything will work out. And it has. I mean, you guys seem
Yeah.
so happy. And I know you were very excited to move home. I was not happy about that, but
I know. We
it's
miss
okay.
California. Believe
I'm
me,
sure you missed the weather,
especially
but
in the winter.
yeah.
Yeah.
But now you're a full-time mom, but on top of being a mom, you're also a singer-songwriter. You've released albums and singles, and she has a beautiful voice. Please go listen to her music on Spotify.
Thank you.
Some of my favorite stuff you've released. But was there ever a time during your pregnancy, or even now, when you thought that maybe you would never return to music or return to pursuing those dreams?
Yes. So especially having a pandemic baby, it changed everything because
Yeah.
I was always working. I've never not worked.
Yeah.
Um, and the plan was never to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. And then it turned into that because of everything. Um, and I definitely felt like I lost myself at some point. And um, listen, being a mom is my favorite role I've ever had. I'm
Yeah.
so proud to be a mom. I'm so proud that she's my daughter, only good things, but it's not all that I am. And I definitely reached a point where I was like, no, I'm a singer-songwriter. Like that's such a huge part of me. And it was really, really hard to lose that and not be working and not be recording and writing and all that stuff. So I actually last month just recorded 2 new songs and it's been years
I can't wait to hear
since
it. I'm
so
so happy.
I feel like myself again. Like it's
Yeah,
so, so huge. So I'm sure you can relate that being a
for
mom
sure.
is definitely the most incredible thing in the entire world, but you have to still do you and do take care of yourself and do what makes you, feel alive.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I definitely realized over the last year, because yeah, everything was at a standstill. Like there was no performing, no music, no nothing happening, right? But
No
now that things are
childcare.
kind right. Well,
I
yes,
mean,
no childcare. I very like I do not take this for granted that my mother lives around the corner.
yes.
Like, and she was so like upset if I even offered like, hey, should I get a nanny? Should I get? She's like, how dare you?
Yeah.
So I'm good. But yes, in general, people didn't have childcare. Like it was just a
Right.
crap year for people. And when it comes to being an artist, one, we already struggle so much as it is, right? Like
Yeah.
it's such a difficult journey to take because it takes a lot to put yourself out there. But it's a huge part of who you are. But I think now being a mom, it's making me want to work harder in achieving dreams and making sure that I'm still doing the things I love because we have to teach them to do that, you know? So if we're not
100%.
doing it, then there's no way that
Yes.
we can impart that onto them. So I'm glad that you found your way back to it. And Gab and I are going to do a song together. And I keep telling her and I keep writing it and rewriting it and writing it and rewrite it. So it's coming, but I'm just not happy with it. And I'm not going to send you anything that I'm not happy with.
Oh, I understand. Yeah.
I know you do. I know you do. That's why I know you're not like, where's the song? Um, so let's go back to when you gave birth because
Yeah.
you have a very a heart-wrenching story from when you gave birth. And I think it's something that one my listeners definitely will need to hear and relate to. And your journey so far is really one of strength and resilience. And you went through such a traumatizing experience shortly after giving birth to your daughter. You lost your dad. And I remember reading it in shock and not even knowing what to do in that moment because it's supposed to be one of the most celebratory moments in your life. This momentous occasion, you're bringing life into the world. And then this just ironic and odd turn of events, a circle of life that you lose one of your parents. So, from the outside looking in, and I don't know because it just seemed like you kept it together, and it was so admirable. And you kept it together enough to even check on me when I gave birth, which is such a testament to the human being that you are. That meant so much to me. But how did you transition from giving birth to losing your dad to becoming a mom and figure out how to cope and eventually heal?
um, I will say that 18 months later, and I don't feel like I am fully healed.
Mm,
So I'm not sure I can um claim to be that. But yeah, it was definitely I don't know how much detail you want me to go into here, but
however much you feel comfortable sharing.
okay. So just to give a little backstory of what happened. My dad lived in Florida. I We live in Philadelphia. And so he was planning to, of course, fly here when my daughter was born, and then pandemic, right? So I was like, oh my goodness, you cannot get on a plane in a public airport and then come meet my newborn. Like,
Right. Right. You're like,
with
absolutely
this
not.
new virus
Yeah.
happening,
Yeah.
absolutely not. My dad also happened to have been a pilot with his own private plane. From the time I was a little kid, I have been in his plane. I countless times, probably like 100 times in my life. He
Mm.
flew us to camp in the summer. He flew us to college. He flew us to the beach for the day. I mean, I've flown with my dad.
Curbside service.
Yeah, literally. The beach was funny. I think we were in the air for like 17 minutes or something. It always made us laugh. But he was an incredible pilot and a very, very, very safe pilot. He wouldn't even fly if it was raining. Um, so, of course, when all this happened, he said, "Well, then I'll just fly myself." That was, what made sense. So he did that. He was here. We couldn't have hospital visitors. It was like March 2020, right? The world just blew up, so we couldn't have hospital visitors. And when we got home, just my mom and dad and my husband's mom and dad were there to meet Aria. So my dad stayed for 2 days, and then was flying back to Florida. Left my house. So my daughter's 4 days old, and I hugged him. Bye. Oh gosh, sorry. I want to get there.
Yeah, take your time. Take your
Um,
time.
I hugged him goodbye and said that we would FaceTime every day and I would send him pictures. And he already had plans to come back in a month. Um, so I remember saying, because, you get home from the hospital and you have a newborn, you're healing, sleep isn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
You're learning how to breastfeed, maybe, all that. I mean, it
Yeah.
is, I
It's
can't even put
so
into
much.
words how hectic and, oh God.
And it's literally this feeling of like they give you the baby and they're just like, okay, bye.
Yeah. Like
Because they're
it's
doing
like,
everything for you in the
oh my
hospital,
goodness.
basically.
And then all of a sudden you're just like, wait, no, I'm the mom now. I make decisions.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to heal from this birth, but there's no time because I'm the only one that can feed my baby right now. Like
Hmm.
it is all consuming, overwhelming. Right. So I remember saying to my dad, next time he was going to be back in a month. And I said, next time you come, it's going to be so much better because I like felt bad that I was a mess.
Yeah.
But right, like, which is
Yeah.
crazy, but I did. I just remember like having to like kick him out of the room every 5 minutes so I could try to breastfeed and just all the stuff. I just remember being like, next time you're back, it's gonna be so much better because I'm gonna have this down and like it's just gonna be better. So unfortunately left my house and was in a plane accident, a plane crash, and we lost him. And we still don't have all the answers
Mm.
as to what happened. But it was not his fault. We do have that much. What happened was not his fault. Um, Not that I think that would make anything better or worse, but he was an incredibly, incredibly wonderful and safe pilot, and what happened was not his fault. But
Yeah. What did you pull on to get the strength to be the mother that Arya needed in that moment?
so I got the call. He left my house that day, and then I got the call around like I think it was like 10 o'clock at night, and it was just disbelief. I mean, it
Yeah.
was not real. There's like no way that happened. It's still not real. It's an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Like that doesn't happen to me. Um, so it was hard to believe it for a long time. But I remember my brother unfortunately was at my dad's house waiting for him to come back, and he's the one that found out everything, and he's the one that had to tell me. So I'm on the phone with him and I'm crying, and all of a sudden my mom, who's holding my 4-day-old baby, looks at me and says, "I'm so sorry, but you have to hang up and you have to stop crying for a moment because you have to feed your baby."
Mm.
And in that moment, it was just this realization that she comes first before absolutely everything. And this is what I have to do. And there's no other choice. There is no other option. And so I'm going to do this. And I did. I hung up with my brother for the moment. I stopped crying for the moment and I breastfed my baby. And I returned to grieving later on my own time. But like, you don't have your own time.
Yeah.
Right. So it was just like little brief moments for a while, for a long time. It was like when I got to take a shower, I would cry in the shower, you know, and like if she was napping, I would go in the other room and like silently cry. It was just like I had to find my own time to grieve. So that made it a lot harder and a lot more difficult because I didn't have closure for so long.
Yeah.
And of course, we had no visitors. I mean, it was just me and Jason, and thank goodness my mom and Jason's mom for a while too. But yeah, I mean, that's what it was. It was really that moment of knowing that I am the one that has to do this, and there's no other choice. So I'm gonna do this. Um, and it's so interesting to think about now because even you saying like how strong I was. And I feel like I was praised for my strength. Like so many, that was everyone's comment. Like, you're so strong. You're so strong. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, no,
Mm,
I'm not. I'm such a mess. You guys have no idea because you're not seeing it. But oh my God, no, I'm not. And that's okay. And that's
yeah.
normal. And like, who would be
Right.
who would have it together and who would be okay, who would be functioning properly? Like it I had to like accept the fact that it was so normal to fall apart. Um and yeah,
I
yeah.
think even just becoming a new mom, and even you take tragedy out of the situation, we don't give ourselves enough grace to just be a mess in general. And I think unless you've gone through it, you can't understand what it feels like, regardless. But then you add a tragedy on top of it. I can't imagine anybody expecting you to not to be a mess, right?
Yeah.
So I think when people say that you're strong, and I know it's hard because people don't know what to say in that moment. They do
Yeah.
only see the exterior, right? So when they say that you're being strong, it's because from their vantage point, you aren't just falling apart when you're talking to people. You aren't just falling apart on social media. You are keeping it together. You are still posting about Aria and how she's the light of your life now and how, beautiful and how happy you are to have her. So it takes a certain amount of strength to even do that much. So it's okay to own up to that, but also it is okay to be a mess. It's
Yeah.
okay to be a mess. And I think there's so much, in general, there's stigma uh, behind motherhood. I mean, just giving birth, how you are pregnant, and then you go into, breastfeeding, for example, which we had many a conversation about, right? And, for the people that are listening, if you haven't gone through breastfeeding, whether you breastfeed for a month or a year, it is not easy.
Oh, nope.
It is not easy. And like you think it's so funny how like movies and television make it seem like the baby just latches on, starts
That's
sucking,
just what
and
you
they're
do.
great.
You have a baby and you
It's
breastfeed
like,
and then you put them
no.
down and they're done and that's what you
Right.
do. Like, no, no,
It's just
nope.
it's not easy.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I stopped breastfeeding after 7 months. One, mainly because I was over it. I just didn't enjoy it. And it's so funny. I feel like I said to John the other day, I was like, I miss breastfeeding. And the way he looked at me, he was like, girl, you hated breastfeeding. What are you talking? Like, who just said that? Right. And I was like, oh, wait, yeah, I totally did hate it. But in our conversations, with everything that you went through, I know that you made a decision. I think it was probably a month or two in to move to formula. And I did my best to make sure you knew that that was fine because I know that there is such a stigma around moms breastfeeding or not. But at the end of the day, if your baby is healthy and happy, that is all that matters. So when
Right.
you made that transition, when did you get to that point of acceptance that as long as your daughter was happy and healthy, it didn't matter what society says or other moms say about this glorification of breastfeeding? Because, like, if all that Arya wanted was oatmeal, then that's what you give her, right? It doesn't matter. As long as she is getting nutrition and she is eating and she is healthy, that is the point, right? But we are made to feel that we have to breastfeed, that we have to do this, that we have to do it for a certain amount of time. So when did you get to that point of acceptance that you knew you were doing what was right for your daughter?
That's what's so crazy is that formula changed my life. Okay. I was not producing. And now hearing my story, who would produce milk
Right.
under those
Right.
circumstances? A
Absolutely.
little stressful, right? Everything affects your milk supply.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my body was under too much trauma and stress to produce. I was not producing. So my baby was hungry. And what I was told was that my baby had colic, which, like, come on, what's colic?
Yeah. There's
That's a
like not
whole
really even a
that's a
definition
whole
for it.
another story, but
Right.
my baby was hungry and I was constantly breastfeed. She was just constantly attached to me. I lived on the couch in what I called breastfeeding position. And I had my mom stick some food in my mouth occasionally and put a water bottle in my mouth. And I was chained to the couch for 1 month, a whole
Yeah.
month of me being like, no, I'm doing this. I'm doing like, why? Why did I do that?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my wonderful mother-in-law said, it's okay if you want to supplement with formula. And I was like, okay. And I felt like she gave me permission. And that's what I was waiting for. Not to put
Mm.
any of that responsibility on her. Like, of course, that's not what she was doing, but that's what I was like. It's like I was waiting for someone to tell me it's okay. And then we switched to formula and my baby was suddenly happy and
Mm.
sleeping and able to be awake without crying. I mean, my whole life changed, and I was able to take a shower,
Mm.
and someone else was able to feed her. I'm telling you, it was life changing. And still, I felt guilty and
Mm.
I felt like a failure. Why? Why? My
'Cause we're
baby was
conditioned to think that.
healthy and
Yeah,
happy, and she
absolutely.
wasn't before. She wasn't before, and now she was. Why did I feel guilty? It's wild.
Yeah. I hate when one people interject themselves into other people's lifestyles and how they choose to raise their children or whatever's
Mhm.
right for their family. But like I said, we're conditioned to think that if you make that decision that, oh well, you're not doing what's natural, or
Yeah.
you're not doing what best milk is what's best for, no, anything that your
Bed is
baby can is,
best.
yes.
As long as
Anything
you
is
are feeding your baby, that's best.
100%. So I'm
Yes.
glad that I'm sad that you felt like you had to be given permission, but I'm glad that you went forward with what was clearly right for Arya,
Mhm.
because who knows if you had kept trying. You know what I mean? Who
Yeah.
knows where you would have been or how she would have felt or what you would have been going through, because
Mhm.
you were going through so much and you had to make the right decision. So I'm very, very proud of you for doing that. And any moms that are listening that are struggling, do what is right for you and your child. Do not listen to what other
Oh my
people
gosh,
say.
don't listen to anyone. Trust I think the hardest thing is to learn to trust your mom gut, because as a new
Hmm.
mom, you're like, I don't have a mom gut yet. I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. I'm new at this. But you do.
Yeah.
Because you know your baby and you don't realize it until way 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 later. And then you're like, "Oh, I do know my baby and I know my baby better than anyone else knows my baby."
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
you trust your mom gut for new moms out there, which is not easy to do.
I love that. I need to get a shirt that says that. Trust your
Trust
mom
your
gut.
mom gut.
So now when we get into, our kids are 18 months now. Oh
Ugh,
my
wild.
goodness. I know. I can't even believe it. I look at her, I'm like, okay. When did that
Full
happen?
adults.
Like, there's things that I already miss. I mean, there
I
were things that I even
know.
started to miss, like at the 6 month mark, every
As it was
milestone,
happening.
right?
Yeah. Mhm.
It's crazy. But we get into the conversations about how we're raising our children, especially in this country now. And
Oh, yeah.
we've had many a conversation about this. And obviously I hope that when our kids are older, they won't have to witness half of the crap that we're witnessing.
Please
But from a
no.
cultural standpoint, I know how proud you are of your ancestry and your heritage and being Jewish. And we've had a lot of conversations and you've made me privy to a lot of things. And I love being educated and I appreciate that. And you also were in an interfaith marriage. Was I think Jason was raised Christian or Catholic?
He was raised Christian. Now he's just
He's just
Jason.
he's just Jason.
That's what he says.
I love that.
He's
But
not a religious
you
person.
you have made the decision to raise your daughter Jewish, and it is so
Mhm.
important. And I'd love for you to talk about why that is so
Yeah.
important for you.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I think this is something that maybe you had learned from one of our conversations is that being Jewish is not just a religion, it is a culture. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, a lot of people don't realize that. And for me, 100%, it is my culture, it is my family, my history. It is such a big part of who I am. And I'm not a religious person. And I know
Hmm.
so many Jewish people that feel that exact same way. Um, and so it was important to me to raise my daughter Jewish. And Jason and I had talked about this like years before we even got married. That I said, in the future, I would like to raise our kids Jewish, and I don't care that you're not Jewish. That doesn't matter to me, but as long as you're okay with it. And he was. And we had traveled to Israel together before we got married, and uh, yeah, so there was just a lot of history that he had learned as well. But um, to me, it's you learn so much more about Jewish history in Hebrew school than in public school, of course.
Mhm.
And it is such an important part of history to not be forgotten because obviously, you know, we've been through hell. So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I just think it's so important to not let that ever be forgotten. And I'm a proud Jewish person,
Yeah.
and there's just so much about it that I love. Just culturally and the family traditions and within our holidays and things like that. So, yeah, just on an educational standpoint, it was important for me to have her learn about our history. And um, I was really proud of my bat mitzvah when I was 13, and
Yeah.
just a lot of things that I was like, I want her to have that too. And if she grows up to say I'm not into this, then that's fine. But it was just more of the learning
For
everything
sure.
that
For
I had
sure.
grown up with.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of our conversations as of late were centered around the rise of anti-Semitism that had
Mhm.
been happening. And I really appreciate the conversations that you were willing to have because you know me, I'm always wanting to learn and be on the right side of history in any way, shape, or form. And if I'm wrong, I'm
Yes,
wrong.
we all should.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm wrong, I wanna learn how to be right. And I wanna correct any mindsets or anything that I've had in the past. So, what have you and Jason decided in terms of teaching Aria about that, possibility when she gets older? Because I know for me, raising a biracial child, she's still a black
Yeah,
woman when she gets older,
exactly.
right?
Yep.
And it's something that I want her to be aware of, and not for me, not teaching her in a sense of like being on guard or like walking
Right.
around scared that something's going to happen, but just hey, if this happens, this is how you handle it. So, what are conversations that you both have had in terms of it being a possibility that she may have to deal with that when she's older?
Um, you know, uh, I think every Jewish person unfortunately has experienced some sort of anti-Semitism in their lives, and I can remember being a young kid, and I came from like a pretty Jewish area and everything,
Hmm.
but still, I can remember some anti-Semitic comments that were made when I was in elementary school, and ongoing. And it's ignorance. It's people just not being educated and not even realizing, right, that their comment is anti-Semitic. And I
Yeah.
think that's such a big part of it as well. Um, so Jason's number one thing is to not live in fear. We don't live in fear, because for me, like as you said, you're raising a biracial daughter, but she looks black. You can see that when you look
Yeah.
at her. For
Yeah.
us, you can tell there's mezuzah on our door. Aria doesn't have a Jewish last name because she has an Irish last name, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's not clear to the naked eye that we're Jewish, but yeah, I mean, of course, she will go to synagogue and things like that, and I am proud of the mezuzah on our door and other things, but so I do get scared sometimes when these things like what has happened recently occur. It
Mm.
scares me to my core. It
Yeah.
makes me want to shut down, not talk about it, not post things because maybe someone doesn't even know that I'm Jewish, and I don't. But and Jason automatically goes, "Nope, we don't live in fear."
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think, like I had
Just don't
said,
live in fear and be proud.
don't live in fear, be proud, and continue the education because like I know obviously with Black Lives Matter, like that's been your
Yeah.
y- you know you just want to educate everyone so that everyone I just think that's such a big part of it
Hmm.
is realizing what you're saying, and maybe just be able to have an open honest conversation
Yeah.
with
And
someone.
what's interesting that I have realized and witnessed in the conversations that I've had with my Jewish friends and just also seeing um comments in regards to a lot of the anti-Semitism that has happened recently and in the last couple of years. I know you said it really ramped up since you know who was in office. He who shall not be named. Um, but I think one of the things I personally realize is that it's kind of what you said about Arya, like she doesn't have a Jewish last name, but she also isn't what people view as Jewish presenting.
Yeah.
So people will probably say offhanded comments, maybe even about a Jewish person, not knowing. So it's that type of behavior and rhetoric that needs to be changed. Of like, it shouldn't even be in your vocabulary
Yes.
whatsoever, right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
that's where that education comes in. But it's yeah, it's those jokes that you don't realize, hey, this is actually anti-Semitic. You're like, oh, but it was just no, it's not just a joke. This is
Right.
why this is painful and harmful to me. So I think
Yeah, so it's
I'm
actually
yeah,
calling people out when they do make a comment.
100%.
And don't it
100%.
doesn't have to be a confrontation, it doesn't have to be a fight, but it's just, "Hey, this is what this means."
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know that.
For sure. Why do you think? Because I was not aware of how
Mhm.
bad anti-Semitism was until it was really brought to my attention. And now it's like a part of things that I speak out about. But why do you
Thank
think
you.
that the Jewish community, yeah, no, it's important, but why do you think the Jewish community is often left out of the marginalized groups that people are doing activism for?
I do think it has a lot to do with what I said, like, you can't tell I'm Jewish from looking at me.
Mm,
So, no one's gonna stand up for me because maybe I can hide it.
mm,
That's just
yeah.
my opinion. I don't know
No,
if
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah. No,
but
that's definitely from your experience, and that makes
mhm,
sense. And I think people don't also think of Jewish people as a minority. They think
because
they're
it's a
just white people,
religion.
but
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not.
But
You
it
know what
but
I mean?
but that, because it's a religion, so it's like that doesn't count. That's not your race. That's not
Yeah,
your ethnicity.
yeah, and it totally
But
is.
but it is. It is.
Yeah, yeah, and
You're
that's the
Italian, I'm
lack of
Jewish.
education that we go back to. Let's
Mhm.
go back to that lack of education.
Yeah.
Hopefully, but I pray and hope that our children don't even have to have these conversations or listen to this podcast and be like, "What are our moms talking about? We don't have to
Wouldn't
do."
that be great?
It
Let's
would be
hope.
amazing. So, when you look back over your entire motherhood journey over the last, even being pregnant, but
Yeah.
over the last year and a half, what is something that you thought about motherhood would be a certain way, but it actually turned out to be completely different?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think absolutely everything about it turned out to be different. Like, the only thing that I knew would happen is that I'm completely obsessed with my daughter. I'm obsessed with
Yeah.
her. I literally want to eat her face.
Oh yeah.
She's
Oh yeah.
delicious. That I knew, but, I didn't know I would have so much trouble regulating my own emotions.
Mm,
I feel like I have a short, string, and that's a really big struggle for me. And it's like she's 1.5. She's doing what a 1.5-year-old does, and I lose
100%.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I didn't think that I would. And that, it's certain things like that. And even, oh my gosh, yeah, looking back on I was excited to be pregnant, and then I got pregnant and I had a really rough pregnancy. Oh boy. So like that I didn't expect. And just like every little thing that was difficult that I didn't think would be difficult. Like, remember when they started eating solids and we were texting each other, like,
Yeah.
what are you feeding your baby? My baby doesn't want to eat anything. I don't think she's ever going to eat food. Right.
Or they
And now
throw
they
it on the
eat.
floor after
Oh
you've already
my
cooked it.
God. You cooked the whole thing and they threw it on the floor, and you're like, it took me so much time. And I Pinterested that recipe and it's got no sugar and it's so good for you. And now it's on the floor.
It's the worst. They have no idea. And that's the thing. You have to remind yourself, they have no idea.
They
But
have
it's
no
still
idea.
so
It's
frustrating.
so frustrating.
Like it makes me
Um,
want to scream.
yes, but thank goodness for my husband. I'm sure John as well is just as level-headed as Jason is, because he just
Yes.
keeps his cool, and I wish I could do that, but I'm not good at that. And maybe it's because we're the ones that went through the pregnancy
Yes.
and the labor and delivery
And
and
they're
the
primary
breastfeeding.
caregivers,
And so we're just like,
Yeah.
rah,
Yeah.
because we
Yes.
went through, and it is different, I'm sure, to just be on the other side of it. I mean, we can't imagine that.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
know how that works. I don't.
Well, with
She
all
lived
that
in my
you've
belly.
right.
Like, I don't know what it's like to not have that.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. But with all that you've been through and just looking through your motherhood journey, and we're talking about like the struggles and the frustrations and losing it, right? But what do you tell yourself to remind yourself that you are a good mom and you're doing a good job?
My daughter is loved every single day. She is loved. She is cared for. She is happy. She is healthy. Um, she comes first. She, I know I'm a good mom because of all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Gab, I'm so glad that we were able to do this. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to share your story. You are doing a good job. Aria is beautiful. Tell
Thank
her
you.
that she will meet her West Coast
I
bestie
cannot wait
sooner
for
than
that.
later, I hope. People, please,
Before
in
they're
this
in
pandemic.
college. Please, please, please. Oh my goodness.
Oh
Sienna
my
and Aria
gosh.
were destined to be friends.
They
They need to
were.
meet.
I can't wait. But can you tell everybody where they can follow you and where they can listen to your music as well?
Yes. So I'm at Gabrielle Taryn on Twitter and Instagram. My music can be heard on all streaming platforms, wherever you get music. My music can be found there under Gabrielle Taryn. And I do have 2 new songs coming very, very soon. I wish I could give you a release date, but I don't know yet. But
I can't
but
wait.
they're coming very soon.
We'll
So
definitely post them. Thank you so much for taking the time. And please make sure you follow her to see her adorable, adorable daughter. She loves dancing to pentatonics, and I can't get enough of
yes,
it.
she does. Thank
And
you
the
for
listeners,
having
make sure,
me.
of course, thank you so much. Listeners, make sure you subscribe, and we'll talk to you again real soon.